this is our journey, this is our story, and this is our life. And so going forward, yes, will we come across people that don't agree? Or is our son going to experience people that just don't understand? And yes, that will be a very real scenario. But it's how we educate ourselves, educate the people around us, and educate him. And, at the end of the day, love makes a family.
Hey there, fellow rebels. Welcome to #ActuallyICan, the podcast where we say a hearty hell yes to designing life on our own terms. I'm Katie Ripp, a lifestyle coach, business mentor, and serial entrepreneur, here to guide you through the wild ride of defying what society expects of us and embracing our authenticity. On this show, we dive deep into taboo topics like death, money, spirituality, entrepreneurship, unapologetic self-care, and personal development, all while swearing and laughing along the way. Expect down and dirty conversations, plenty of humor, and a whole lot of exploration, leaving you feeling empowered to be your truest self. Whether you're craving a good laugh, seeking unconventional self-care tips, or simply looking for some camaraderie, you've come to the right place. We only get this one short life, so buckle up and let's design yours on our own terms. Ready to dive in? Let's go. Okay, well, hi, Brent.
Hello there.
Okay, so for everybody listening here, Brent is my banking best friend. I call him my banking BFF. We met, God, I don't even know.
I think it's
right around the time we opened 1909?
Yeah, a little bit before that.
Maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And Brent has single-handedly or double-handedly brought us to a financial peaceful state.
Oh, you made it easy.
Thank you. But Brent also has a beautiful child via surrogacy. And I wanted to have him on here to talk about that because it is sort of what that weird, like, taboo subjects, especially with same-sex marriages. I don't know if that's like the right way to say that or if there's a way around it, but like just a very like touchy subject. I don't think it should be, but that doesn't really mean, just because I don't think it should be doesn't mean anything really.
Yeah, but you're totally right. It's just one of those questions and topics that people support, but they don't know how to ask. And
such a great way to say it. Like, I totally support it on so many levels, but I really don't know the details of it. So just like on a nosy level, because I like to be nosy, on a nosy level, I love to get into like details of it. But I also think that your story and all of the guests I have on here, like, yes, actually, I can do this, right? Like, I can decide to get married and have my child via this way, this process. But I think that when we talk about these things, all of the things, we give people permission to ask questions or to look into the process or like a permission slip to say, oh, maybe actually I can do that too. Even though from a 30,000 foot view, it's obviously a popular thing to do. But when you hear it from somebody's actual perspective, like a live person, a live, really beautiful, soulful, amazing person, It just gives people permission to do that. So if you don't mind, we'll just like dig right in.
Let's do it.
Okay. So one of the big like questions for me personally, but maybe for other listeners out there is like, when did you and your husband first start talking about even having a family? Because like as a same-sex couple, that's not just like the traditional easy way.
Yeah. And it's a great question. And, especially with, you can't just make a baby. We started the conversation, I bet we were 3 to 4 months into our relationship. Having gotten together, I was in my late 20s. He was, mid 30s. At that point, when you start a relationship, you're talking about the major life decisions. So early on, that was a conversation we had. And we both knew we wanted a family, not at that time, but we agreed that, yes, we wanted a family. The specifics of how we were going to do it, we didn't discuss, but we, at least agreed on, yes, a family is part of the plan, and when the time is right, we'll dive further into the conversation. So yeah, very early on.
Which I think that's an early on conversation for lots of people, right? Yeah. Like I don't think that's like exclusive to hetero couples or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like you just have that conversation, like when you're in a Well, and some people don't have the conversation that really fucks up their marriage. Like, oh,
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
conversation that you wanted a kid and I didn't want a kid. And all of a sudden we're 4 years into marriage and nope, that's not an option, right? Like
Yeah.
you
That's
have
just
to
not,
have
it's
that
not
conversation.
it's not well, I want a lake house, you want a farmhouse. Like, no, you don't just give up on those types of dreams. You absolutely have to have the conversations, and you have to have honest conversations, not what you think the other wants to hear. You have to stand for yourself, stand for what you want. And if there isn't a full agreement, well, then, also by doing it early, you have allowed yourself time to evolve those conversations while your relationship evolves. And if you get to that point where, you just can't come to an agreement, well, then you have to make some harder decisions. But it absolutely should be a conversation that people have, once they start to get into more serious, stable, long-term arrangement.
Yeah. So you get married, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've decided that you want children before you get married. You get married. How long after you got married did you start talking about that process?
So we actually started before we got married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we were together, I think it was almost 4 years before we got engaged, but we knew that was coming. And also, we were starting to, get a little bit older, life was kind of evolving in a couple areas. And so because of the process once we, got a little more serious about it, then we started talking about, well, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And when, surrogacy was kind of the only option that worked for us in our situation. It just kind of was a natural conversation. There were a lot of great things about it that we liked and would work for us. And so we knew the process would take a while. And so we began probably a year before we officially got married, having those conversations and starting pieces of the puzzle. And then things kind of just timed out where then once we were married, the next logical steps were, okay, now we're going to get deep in the throes of this. So,
okay.
Yeah, it was.
So not a shotgun wedding.
No, not even close.
Do you know how long I was waiting for that joke? Like your entire.
I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. Yeah.
Okay, so surrogacy was just like your first choice, right? Like obviously there's, fostering or adopting. Yep. There's other options out there. It just happened to be your first choice.
Yeah. And we fully respected all the other options. Me personally had always been interested in other ways of doing it. But yeah, this worked for both of us and we agreed on it. And because of the closer connections we had to some options, it all made sense and fell in line quite nicely. And so even just disclaimer, as I talk about our paths, I fully acknowledge that everybody's path is very different and it's hard. We got very lucky in many aspects, but yeah, surrogacy just kind of rose to the top very quickly for what would work for us and the ways we could go about doing it.
Yeah. So tell me about that process. Like, did you know how to start that process? Like, I wouldn't even know. I mean, I guess I would Google surrogacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And naturally, that would be the right way to do it. And I mean, obviously being careful with where you're reading your information, but
like check your sources.
Yeah. And so for us, we got really lucky that a close friend of ours knew somebody who had already carried for 2 other couples and one individual. And so knowing that, we kind of pretty much skipped the Google search and just had reached out to our friend of a friend and to just say, hey, we are thinking about this process. We know each other enough that we feel like we can, have a very honest conversation. We need to know, we don't need the fluff version. We need the real version from someone who has been involved in it. And so we arranged a dinner and started talking and, talked through start to finish all the various components. And one thing to note too, ours, we call it a surrogate. It was technically a gestational carrier because we had an egg donor and then the sperm and then the embryos were created and transferred into our carrier. So it was not her egg. So.
Oh my God. Okay. So I have to know about this. Like, you had a separate egg donor, not the surrogate.
Correct.
And is the term surrogate somebody that uses their own egg?
Yes.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. But because again, we don't talk.
I had no idea.
I
This
didn't
is
know till we were in it. So,
okay.
uh,
But look how
but
much you're
yeah,
teaching people already,
yeah.
Brent.
And another great reason I want to have these conversations is to educate people. It's okay to ask. It's
Yeah.
very okay to ask. Yeah. And so we just had those conversations and it further solidified that this was the option we wanted to take because there were ways that we could be very involved in the entire process and give us that pregnancy experience that a lot of people are used to or might call traditional. So yeah, so that's how the
And
planning
you wanted
started.
that part, right?
Yes.
You wanted the
Yes.
part of like, we want to be involved in the doctor's appointments and the
Yeah.
ultrasounds and okay.
Yep.
And had you decided already on the egg donor and like, how do you decide which one of you? Or do you just like both go in a cup and put it together and just whatever?
Yeah. So at that point, we had not even gotten to the egg donor phase because we
Okay.
were just trying to figure out like, okay, is this, hearing the nitty gritty details, is this going to be what works for us?
Sure.
And so once we knew that, then yeah, that's a whole nother chapter of like the process. And as far as who's the biological father, that was not important to me. It just wasn't something that I was focused on. I was focused on being a father. The biology of it had zero importance to me.
Yeah.
And so that was just an easy decision that I didn't hold that as something I needed to be a part of or needed to even be a consideration for. So that part was very easy for us to decide.
Oh, interesting. But I'm guessing that's not so easy for some people.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people that, there's always a desire to have, the next generation be biologically a part of you. And I totally respect that. For me, that just didn't need to be something to stress over.
Not a hill you want to die in.
No, but I definitely can appreciate those that want that part of fatherhood or motherhood, however you want to. But there's options where you can mix both and then it is part of both. But for me personally, disclaimer, just was a little too weird. And so I didn't want to go down that route. But
yeah. I mean, just like an easy decision. We're just like, this is the way we're going to go.
Yeah. But totally respect those that they wanted to.
Yeah. Good job to follow your gut, Brent. Good job.
Yeah. And do we need any more of my crazy out in the world? Probably not.
I mean, I would love some more Brent, but we'll talk about that.
What you wish for.
Yeah. So you had this dinner. Tell me what happens after that.
So then this is one of my favorite. I have a lot of favorite parts of our journey, but this is one of the favorite parts for me because I'm one where, I go off my gut. I go off what feels right. And I had worked myself up that finding the right person is going to be if we can get through that, I'll be shocked. But, we met with our friend of a friend and we are leaving the restaurant and I looked at my husband and just said, she's it. Everything about her was it. Her presence is welcoming and calming. She was able to have a conversation with both myself and my husband and realize that we're very different people and that he needs the facts. We need to get to A to Z, but we got to hit all of the letters. We might start at A, we'll get to Z, but I got to go I've got to go through this whole entire journey and it's going to be scattered. Yeah. And so she fully identified that piece and I'm the more emotional one, Phil's the more stable, my husband's the more stable one. And so just knowing that she got that was huge for me, but I felt comfort. I felt like we were protected. And so, yeah, I made that comment and my husband, felt the same. And so we let a couple weeks ride and then we reached back out to her and just said, hey, we'd like to have a follow-up conversation with you and your spouse. We just have some additional questions and
married.
thoughts. Yeah. And so we got together and basically just flat out said, if you're interested, we would love you to consider carrying for us. And, without question, she said, I'm in. I've already done this twice. I want to do it one more time. You guys are my people to do this with. And so that's her.
It's like the sweetest thing.
And she
what a gift.
Yeah. And the other part that was so comforting was the reason that she does this for people or did it for people. She's since, retired, if you will. But knowing that her story was that she once had a coworker who wanted a child but could not carry. And so that had such an impact on her. And so her reason for doing this was to give other people the opportunity to have a family that can't, in the more traditional or natural way. And so knowing that, and then also knowing that the two other scenarios she's carried in were for the people that wouldn't normally be selected by carriers and surrogates and agencies. And so even knowing that, if we were to take the agency route, we would, fall into that category. There's just a lot about her and her desire and why she does this that was so attractive and so meaningful. And so the pieces just all fell together and it just felt right for this journey. And knowing that we had a friend in this and we had a partner in this, and she was going to care and be just as invested. And this wasn't just a business transaction.
Yeah. Although kind of.
I mean, it is. It 100% is. But knowing that we all were able to do the business transaction when that was the conversation we needed to have. But we could also have we're on this new life journey together.
Yeah. I mean, this is like all about being a heart-led business owner.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can do it differently.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is the most personal transaction possibly in the world. Right?
Yeah.
You have to make it a business, but it can be so heart-led that everybody comes out of this winning. Everybody.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And keeping the goal in mind through all of it, even as you get the attorneys involved, it's just remembering you and that individual that's carrying the child, you have to be on the same page first and foremost. And all the other noise around it, if you let that seep in, then you're going to have a negative experience or things might go awry that maybe could have been avoided. And so, that's, if I can tell anybody, make sure you have that solid connection.
Yeah.
And if you don't know the person and it truly is, it's this stranger via an agency, make the conversation personal and have warmth and understanding. And remember that person, everybody involved, is emotionally impacted by it, and just have some grace for each other.
Yeah.
But it's the most personal and, like you said, heart-led thing you can do and heart-led business you can have.
Yeah. I mean, yes, they exist.
Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah. Okay. So egg donor.
Yeah. So this part of the process was the most frustrating. So when you go into surrogacy, gestational carrier, you've got a couple options. You can do a natural egg cycle. Obviously, you prep the female with, all the appropriate hormones, and then you do an egg retrieval, and you get all of the eggs from that cycle. And then from there, some people opt to go ahead and fertilize the eggs right away, or you can freeze them and then thaw them to then fertilize. And we can dive more specifically into each side. But then the other option is to just go through an egg bank where you buy cohorts of 6 frozen eggs. So they've already been retrieved from the female, frozen into these groups of 6. In both scenarios, you're flipping through a catalog, essentially.
I want to know about that. Do you get to see what they look like?
So you get to see everything from baby pictures to, I'd say, young adult pictures. You don't see them as an adult.
Okay. You don't see them like the day they retrieve.
No.
Okay.
They keep some anonymity for that, but you are
obviously makes sense.
Yeah. You're seeing various stages in life, and then you're seeing their full, and I mean full history, down to genetics, down to all the way. I think it branches out to aunts and uncles and their medical history and who in their family has passed away and why. So you're seeing everything you possibly can about this individual and their family so that you can make the best decisions for what's going to work for your family. If someone has a history of diabetes in their family and you're saying, well, the biological father has that same history, like let's maybe not pair those two together because it's just not maybe the best scenario to put a child
for sure.
in.
Are you in a position to then go in and filter down?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you can go on and, there's some algorithm that says, okay, I don't want somebody with I have diabetes. I don't want somebody with diabetes. So it takes all those people out.
You filter down hair color, eye color, skin color, even, their national origin, anything you think you could filter on, you can. And so it just kind of narrows it down. And then, if you take the frozen side, then yeah, you're buying what's available. Typically it's 6. Once in a while, you'll get lucky where you're getting 2 cohorts of 12.
So there's
then,
really like 2 business transactions here. There's like the purchase of the egg.
Yep.
Well, so that's like one purchase, right?
The egg scenario is one bucket.
Okay.
And then you've got the actual surrogate or carrier. In our case, the carrier. That's another bucket.
Yeah.
And then, in the mix of
like
all that, you
the egg and getting the embryo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then inserting it in the carrier.
Yep.
Like that's another medical thing, right? Like
so essentially you could think of it. We had 3 buckets. We had the fertility. Well, I guess maybe, we had 3 buckets. We had the fertility clinic, we had the carrier, and then we had the egg donor. So there's 3 major components that we are funding and working with to make all of it come together.
And this sounds so weird, but like, are you general contracting all of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like, you're not working with an agency, because an agency, like sometimes you would pay one agency and they would do they would facilitate all of that because
so that's where our
because
scenario,
you found the donor and you had the sperm, like you could have done, like it was easier to do that by yourself.
Yeah. So most people are going to have the agency that is, that general contractor kind of facilitating all of it. We were able to remove that piece. And so we just had to deal with via our fertility clinic.
Yep.
We worked with the egg bank via them, but that was still a third party part of this. So we were fortunate because the agency is going to have a whole nother level of cost and a whole nother level of people to work with. And so that's where we were very fortunate to remove that piece. And we're able to just have our attorneys handle a lot of the piece that the agency would normally.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about the actual, like, now we've got everything together, right? So get 6 embryos.
So the first round, we went the frozen route so in total we did 4 rounds of eggs. The first 3 were frozen. So the first round, we purchased 6. They were shipped to our fertility clinic, and then we entered into the fertilization period. So each of the 6 eggs was fertilized, and then you have to give them basically a 7-day growth period. And at that 7 days, we ended up we had 2, I believe. And so with given 6, that's a decent number. You hope for more, but obviously there's just nature that it takes its course.
Yeah.
And so first transfer goes in, it takes, and probably 9 weeks in, we miscarried for whatever reason. We'll never know, despite we had done genetic testing on everything. That's another option once you have the embryos, is to genetic test for over 250 various genetic deficiencies. We had just decided that was important to us because if we're spending the money and basically playing with science and we have the ability to pay for that testing, let's do it so that we're setting ourselves up for success. And so, unfortunately, the first one didn't take. And so, we, experienced the same emotions that everybody else goes through that, which was very unexpected for me because at this point I'm trying to figure out, this is us, but I'm a little bit removed, but yet I'm not. And so it was just a very emotional time. It was, once we got all the pieces in place, things, they progress. And there's so many things that you have to be thinking about at all times. And so, that first round was the best whirlwind I could possibly go through. And that I think everyone can benefit from. So so first round doesn't take. We're sad, it is what it is. But then, you jump back in. So enter into second round, back to the catalog to try to find an egg donor because our first one was not available anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So now you're on to the next one, who's available. And, once you're to that point, you're basically checking daily, if not hourly, because you don't know. The good ones get taken right away and you've got millions of people watching this. So, we even had to
a full-time job.
It basically is. And we basically had to come up with some key terms for text messaging of like, okay, this means this, like you need to stop what you're doing and look at this because if we need to act, we need to do it now. Or I've got this one that I'm curious about. if she's available tonight when we're together, okay, let's take a look. But if not, like, no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it is. That's the best way to put it. It's a full-time job on top of your full-time job.
And your life and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a whole nother stressful component. And so I think this is a good time for me to tell people that when you enter into this process, you have to have your people. If you don't have your people, your support system, I commend you for getting through it with sanity. But it's so important to have those conversations with the people you trust. Share what you feel is pertinent to them so that they can be a support system for you, because it's such a roller coaster of emotions, and there's anxiety over, am I going to get the egg donor I want? Am I going to, who knows? You just don't know. And so it's so crucial to have that. And that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation too, because while a more normal process, it is still taboo, and it shouldn't be, frankly.
Well, no. And I think just like knowing, knowledge is power, right? So like all of a sudden I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, like, it's kind of like not getting the house that you thought you wanted, right? Like I'm not getting the house I thought I wanted and I'm crushed by this. But then the house that I end up with actually turns out to be the best house. Like, I'm so glad I didn't get that other house kind of thing, right? So but we're talking about a child here, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't a house. It's a child. It's a new human being. And when you were talking before about like messing around with science, yes, you're messing around with science. And I think it's amazing that we have that kind of technology. But also like when you're doing that on a regular basis, it's so easy to think of it as transactional. And then you have a loss like that and the emotions just like slap you across the face. They're like, oh no, wait, the universe is like, wait, please. Actually, this is real. And look, this is a real loss. And here are real emotions around this. And this is not picking out drapes.
Yeah. Yep. It is.
It's fascinating, Brent.
Yeah. It's one of, if not the most important decision you're going to make. And some of the things that you have to think about while you're picking out an egg donor, one of the, I think, important things we had to decide was, so the egg donor has two options when they are donating their eggs. First one, do they want to remain anonymous for the entirety of their life? That is an option. The other option is when child turns 18, they are okay being contacted so that that child can know who their biological mother is. And so I always tell people that was the first parental decision I made was, and I shouldn't say me, our first parental decision was, what options do we want our future child to have? And you have to remove yourself from that and say, what is going to be best for your child? And so, we had to make that decision and not think about ourselves. And so you're already having to put yourself in this mental parental state when you don't even know if there's going to be a child involved.
Yeah. And these are decisions I didn't have to make. Right? Like these are decisions that I just like, I mean, maybe TMI, but like we got pregnant the first time, both times, right? Like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I am pregnant. I didn't think about any of this, right? Like none of it. I didn't have to think about anything. I basically thought about, at the time, how fat I was going to get. And right. And your carrier has to think about that anyway, right? Like those are kind of, she's going to have to think about all that, right? Anyway, like I wasn't making decisions about my 18-year-old son when I before I got pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good.
And
it's so good for you to share, Brent.
Yeah. I mean, and as I've always told you, I'm an open book. I think it's important to have this information out there and for people to know that there's other people locally, regionally, nationally that are willing to talk, because we were lucky that we were able to have that relationship with our carrier early on to know some of this stuff. But a lot of people aren't going to be in that scenario. And so to know that there are resource groups and there are people that can tell you, I'm not going to tell you all fluff. I'll tell you exactly how it is because I want you to understand and have a very real understanding of what you're the journey you're about to take. So that you're not, I think it just helps control your emotions with it and what to expect.
Yeah.
So,
More you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're on the second round.
Yes. So we did another frozen round. Nothing developed. Embryos did not, I can't remember how many made it to the final day, but after the genetic testing, they were not good. And so disappointed, but we'd rather know that they're not great from the get go so we don't waste time or anything like that. And so third round, we're going again and third egg donor. And I should back up. So second round, we had embryos they didn't take. So then moved to third round, new egg donor. And again, I don't remember how many we had. We go through the growth cycle and nothing again. So that's where we took a hard pause of, okay, this is very trying. It's very exhausting for us. COVID is starting to be a thing. So there's just a lot of factors and we're tired. And so we took a hard pause to just say, okay, are 3 rounds enough? Can we be satisfied with 3 rounds of trying? And maybe this is the universe telling us that, while you guys want this, it's just not in the cards. Should you explore other options? What is next? And so we took a little bit of time to just kind of sit with our feelings, talk, see what we were feeling. And, for me personally, I was very frustrated with the process. We had interviewed various fertility clinics and one had the very cocky thought to say, for you guys, this should be like a slam dunk 100%, no problem. And while I knew that that was not the case, you still have that in the back of your head. Like, we basically are in the best situation because we can literally put the puzzle together with the perfect pieces. So why is this not working? Even though the smart side of my brain said you can't believe that.
Well, yeah, but logic goes out the window at that point, right?
Yeah. And so I was starting to think about, maybe adoption is something we start to consider. But again, this wasn't just me. We had to have a collective conversation. And again, surrogacy was just still the best option for us. Yeah. It checked all the boxes that were important to us. And so after a brief pause, we dove back in, but we switched our method. We then switched back to, we're going to do the natural egg retrieval. So basically, we got the egg donor lined up. She took the medicine, did all of that. And then when she was ready, she came into the fertility clinic and we retrieved all of the eggs. So we got, I think it was in the 20s. We got 20 some eggs, which is great. I mean, it's, double or 3 times what we were getting for the same amount of money. But with that, you have to have some other things ready. Like, the sperm has to be ready to go so that they can fertilize right away. And so, we had some help from our fertility clinic to make that happen. And we had, in the meantime, figured out that the egg bank was doing some things that were very questionable that actually set us up for failure, which was very annoying because, for us, we could make it work. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that might have been their last chance, the last, amount of money they had for this. And Yeah. So that, it was an anger feeling of just, you're lucky it did this to us.
Yeah. It's like betrayal.
Yeah, it very much is. And so you kind of we had to put that aside and then we shifted because we also learned that, the frozen route, while it's a newer option, it does decrease the health of the eggs. And so we opted to take the more tedious path that required a lot more pieces to be involved, but it worked for us in the end. And, I've had conversations with people interested in the process before, and I will hands down always say, avoid the frozen way, because you're adding a level of failure to it, for a lack of a better way. But yeah, so we ended up with a lot more eggs fertilized. And at the end of it, we had 7 embryos, 7 very healthy embryos of varying genders. Everything was good. And so
wait, you knew the gender?
So because of the genetic testing, that's one thing they find out. So, we had...
So you knew what the embryos were?
So we knew what all 7 were. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. As far as once it was time to transfer, we did not know that. We had just said, we need you to pick, they'd grade them basically on an A-B scale. And we just said, you need to pick the A+ one. Yeah. That is where we're at. So yeah, but we didn't genetic test to know what the gender was. We did that testing to know that everything was okay with all of the genetics involved. That just happens to be something you get to find out. So
yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, we get to find it out later anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So Yeah. And so we ended up in a really great scenario. And it's one of those times where I'm very thankful we hit pause,
Yeah.
sat in our feelings, had the conversations, but also had the advocates on our side and on our team to say, we hear you, we see you, we know where you were at, but let's try this again. We think we can do this. And so we did it. And, here we are with 7 embryos ready to transfer. So then you just shift to getting the carrier ready, and then it's transfer day and you
Oh
wait.
my God, it's a day. Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do they do one?
So this is where there's some variation. So it's going to come down to the fertility clinic and what is their protocol. It also comes down to what you and the surrogate or carrier have decided. In our case, it was 1. We were not doing any more than that. That was not allowed, which is fine. Because if you put in 2, you could move both and then you're down 2, where maybe it was just a timing thing where if you had only done 1, and then you do the other one, it could have taken. So yeah, we just did.
And
one.
also
Plus,
you might end up with twins.
Correct. That would have been fun, but that was not the case. Yeah. So we transferred the first embryo, and, lucky for us, that one took, and, we haven't had to touch the remaining. So.
Wow. Yeah. So what do you do with the remaining?
So we have them on ice. They are
really?
frozen. Yeah, they're frozen on ice. There's lots of options at this point. But yeah, you can keep them.
Donate embryos?
Yes, that is an option that people can donate their embryos to those couples that maybe...
I sound really stupid here.
No, these are all things I didn't know until I was in the process.
I didn't know you could donate embryos.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things people don't talk about. There's such a taboo of, well, is that child biologically yours? Well, who the fuck cares?
Right? Yeah.
It's that is an option for people. So, yeah.
Hello, my friends. It's Katie here. If you're feeling stuck or searching for more purpose in your life, I have something special for you. My new book, Midlife on Purpose, is out now. It's all about embracing midlife as a time for growth, joy, and living authentically. Packed with worksheets, tools, reflections, and trackers, this workbook is your guide to rediscovering your passions and creating a life you love. Whether you're navigating career changes, personal challenges, or simply seeking more fulfillment, Midlife on Purpose will inspire you to live boldly and with intention. Get your copy today and start your journey to a more purposeful life. Available at katierip.com and Amazon.
Okay, so tell me about the pregnancy.
Yeah, pregnancy I will say that I definitely ate up the whole, well, we're pregnant. I can eat whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. But yeah. So pregnancy, for her, it was pretty status quo. This was not her first time. She knew her body. She knew every phase of this. So she shared those details. So we knew what was going on. And so we were able to support her in the ways that she needed to be supported. She was local enough that we could be as involved or not as we wanted. Per our agreement, we had the right to be at every appointment. Basically, we had full access. But we trusted her, knowing that she had done this many times before and how well she knew her body. I mean, there were times where she knew her body better than the doctor did and would say, I'm going to be ready on this day. And the doctor would say, oh, okay, well, guess who was right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so we just kind of let her go about the pregnancy and kind of do her thing. We attended all the major milestone appointments, and we're there to support her. And we would see her probably once a month just to check in, and it's also fun too. We're not seeing the belly grow every day. So to be able to still experience that and, the kicks and all of that. Yeah. And she was really great about, if there was a night where, he was really active, the next morning she would give us an update on, hey, he was kicking last night. And so, while we weren't there for the day-to-day stuff, we were very much involved in this pregnancy and definitely felt the pregnancy experience. And, because she knew and she's been through it. And so she knew how important it was. And there was also a benefit to us being local enough to interact on a more regular basis versus the other times. Because with surrogacy, or being a carrier. During the initial phase that we've already talked about in this conversation, the surrogate or carrier is going to the intended parents for appointments and all of that, because you're going to their doctors and all of that. Then when you're at the end of the pregnancy, then the intended parents are coming to the carrier or the surrogate, because at that point, she needs to be local to where she's going to be. So there's very much there's a lot of, in many people's cases, there's a lot of travel involved and a lot of logistics you have to figure out. And so there was just a lot of benefit to us being close enough where we could have that closer involvement on a more regular basis. But we also fully respected her, and some of this is her body, and she's owed that privacy, and some of the routine appointments we don't need to go to. We trust you, and she would communicate with us on, hey, everything's great or whatnot. But yeah, so that was just a very surreal experience leading up to birth, which was very not just normal. It was, So yeah. And through this whole process, the other thing to think about or to share is the money part of this, the transactional part of it that, people don't like to talk about, but it is part of it. The intended parents are responsible for, leading up to the pregnancy, medications and things that she needs to prep for this process. And then once pregnant, she got a gas stipend every however often she submitted it. Then she got a food stipend. She got a clothing stipend. Like, there's a lot of money, like things that you are providing for, because if it wasn't for you, she wouldn't need maternity clothes, or she maybe, wouldn't need as much food. And so there is added another component. There is a company that all they do are escrow accounts for these types of scenarios, which was kind of nice, because then she didn't have to come to us for money. Yeah. They just removed that piece of it. And so we just had to keep this account funded to a certain dollar amount, and then she would submit for any of those three things and get paid via that escrow account. So
interesting. So was all of that done ahead of time through attorneys?
Yeah. So she had an attorney representing her. We had an attorney representing us. And there was a very long document that we all had to agree on and sign, but everything was outlined in there.
Yeah. So
and all of that is
agreed on how much it was going to be for maternity clothing, or all these stipends were already agreed upon. And also she knew what it was going to cost her.
Yeah.
She'd done it before, right?
Yep. Yeah. And there's also some standards per that industry, if you will. But she knew that from the past. And so all of that is signed, sealed, and delivered before you even start any of it.
Yeah. And I imagine that this is all, from a finance standpoint, right? Like, these things cost money. Yes. Everybody knows it's expensive, right? All you hear is IVF is expensive, surrogacy is expensive, adoption is expensive, but nobody really knows what expensive means. And I don't want to ask you specifics about yours, because it's very, I realize that it is very specific to a surrogate agency or whatever. Can you give me a range of what we're talking about for, like, the fertility clinic? Is there a range that, you're talking? I mean, is it, let's just say, is it like $100,000 plus? Is it $50,000 plus? Is it $500,000? You know what I mean? Like, if you're expensive, expensive is way different for me than it is for my 25-year-old self.
Yeah. So all in for all the components, you are definitely in the 100,000 plus range.
Okay.
For standard surrogate or carrier fee, you're in the 30 to 40,000 range, just for her fee for
being the carrier.
Yeah, being that.
Yeah, being the vessel.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. As far as the eggs, I think that's going to vary a little bit by the egg bank, but you're in the 15 to 30 range for eggs, depending on the path you take, how many you get.
I mean, are there varying prices for, like, this is going to sound so dumb, but, like, are blue eyes more expensive than brown eyes?
No.
Okay.
No, nope. The eggs are, the cost is the same. So you're not,
okay. So interesting.
So that's pretty standard, but it's standard.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So expensive.
Yeah. Yes. It is a financial commitment. Fortunately, there's options out there for financing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. There's different programs you can submit to get, kind of financial aid, if you will.
Like
for
loans?
This. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Also a great time. You could use your HELOC for that if you wanted. There's the banker that in me.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It immediately went to my head, like, are there things that you can't use it? Like, can you not use a HELOC for it? But you told me.
As you know, as I tell my clients, I don't care what you do with it, just pay it back.
Yeah. If you want to buy a baby, by all means.
Yeah. So there's tools out there to assist with the process because it is so expensive.
I didn't really know that. I kind of thought you had to pay cash for all this shit. So
you'd think, but yeah,
like that's also an amazing tool. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Do your research. Check a few different places, and check just in you. You'd be surprised at what you already have in your life that could be a way to pay.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so birth.
Yes. Yeah. So because our carrier knew herself, like she had prepped us from the get-go, like I will go at this week. And when I say go, we're going, within an hour. So just be ready. So for us, it was, in those final 4 weeks of our pregnancy where I had decided, okay, I told my husband, like, by this date, you need to stop your travel because we know typically she's going to go early. I'm going to start going to the appointments just because at that point, I think you're hearing a lot. And so she had one and I said, okay, I'm going to start coming to them. We go. And as we're sitting there waiting, she said, yeah, I just, wanted to let you know, I did start contractions last night, but they were light. So I didn't want to alarm you guys. And I didn't know too, like maybe this is just kind of the pre, the pre,
whatever. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, cool. This is okay. We're getting close here. This is real. Yeah. Let me go into the appointment and the doctor looks and, hey, you're dilated this much. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the next couple of days. So, okay, you're automatically, mentally we kind of already prepared for that, but you're kind of, okay, do we, for me, it's a high anxiety. Okay. Do I have everything ready? I better start to get work, in line and, because I know that when she says go, it's going to happen. So there's not going to be a lot of this. Okay. She's in labor for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so, at that point, as we left that appointment, she said, I'm going to head home. I'm going to be at home. I'm having my husband come home, keep you monitored. She had sent my husband and I a text, while I was with her and, just so he could hear, like, this is what's going on. Why don't you head home and work? Like we need to be stationary because it's probably going to come sooner than later. And so, we're, the whole day, working. I think I had stuff wrapped up within 2 hours by the time I got home, just cause that's me. And, so then we're just kind of waiting and trying not to bother her. And oddly enough, if anyone says, whether you're pregnant or not, or if you're not pregnant, you don't go into nesting mode, you can go into nesting mode. Cause I went into full, like I cleaned the entire fridge, anything that could be cleaned was clean.
Yeah. It's like, you're never coming home again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was just also, I think too, that nervous energy of just, things need to be in place. And I'll never forget, she called at 4:53 or no, she called at 4:55. And I went and got my husband and said, hey guys, like contractions they're pretty intense. I think we're going to head in just to check, you don't need to come. And I said, no, we're going to be there. So I think that was 4:55. We were out the door by 5:06 on our way to the hospital through Madison traffic at the worst time. I think we got to the hospital at 5:25 and he was born at 5:43. So again, she knew her body. So we knew we got to go. And I think it's the one time I told my husband, you drive as fast as you need to, and I don't care.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah. And even in the hospital, we get there and they're trying to stop you need to register. You need to answer all these questions. No, ma'am. No, she's in this room. If you have questions for me, you are welcome to walk with me and hang with me in the elevator. Yeah. But if I miss this birth, you're not going to want to know. And so, we made it in there. We were able to be in there. We were able to get an exception because it was obviously still, tail end of COVID times.
Yeah.
Which we can come back to that because I have a great point for that. But so it was going to be one support person for her and one support person for the baby. And so the side piece we'll come back to, but we were all able to be in there. So we got in there, a couple pushes, and there he was. So we barely made it, but it was so surreal and so amazing that just kind of being there to just witness this. You know that. You know how amazing that is. But also, we were all in the room together, the four of us, and just finally seeing like this is what all the hard work and the relationship we have built as a team of four, like this is what it all came down to.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just at that point, you're like, this was all worth it. This is why we have experienced all of this. You know, while it truly sucked at times, I wouldn't trade any of it. You know, not only for the obvious fact of we wouldn't have our son or we'd have, who knows, but this is exactly why everything happened for this exact moment. And we're here, we made it. And now the next chapter starts.
So tell me about the experience of like baby comes out, right? Like my brain goes to normally they would put the baby on the mom's chest, except like not mom, right? So do you guys get baby?
Yeah, so she did take him initially, just because again, you're kind of wrapping up some things and that was cool. But pretty quickly after that, he was given to us to do, you know, skin on skin and just kind of at that point, that's when she's kind of out of it now.
Yeah. Did she, I mean, was that something discussed in the beginning? Like I don't know how, like, you don't really want to suck the romance out of it, but at the same time, like those are important. Like that's an important attachment.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about a living human that there are like scientific, evidence to back up the skin on skin, the attachment, you know, that kind of thing. Not to mention the emotional part of like, that's my baby.
Right. Yeah.
And her emotion of, I was just the vessel. This is not my baby. Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's extremely difficult after you've just pushed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. All of that is very much outlined. And the hospitals actually have protocols too in place for these types of scenarios. So for us, we understood. I mean, there is a period where you all have to be in there because there's still some things that they want to try. You know, does the baby latch? You go, even though she wasn't going to be breastfeeding, it is important to know, does the baby respond to a nipple? You know, so just kind of some of those things. And there's a lot of good benefits in those first few ounces of breast milk. So you want to make sure that you give that. But again, we had all of that was outlined as far as what we would allow when she was okay.
Somebody knows to ask those questions, obviously. Like, okay. So again, my brain goes to like, if cousin Jenny wants to carry my baby, it's cool to have like that kind of conversation and be like, I'll totally carry your baby. Except there's so much in there that if you don't have that outlined in advance, just like every business transaction on earth, if you don't have that outlined, then there are expectations that are somehow going to be not met.
Correct. And that's why you could have your best friend, your sister, your cousin, whoever carry for you, you have to have those conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are. Because when you're in that moment, it's a relief to know, well, this decision is already made per writing, per a legal contract, you know, so you're protected. So yeah, you have to have those conversations. If you don't, you're asking for the biggest mess in the world.
Well, and there's not a bigger mess than that.
Yeah.
Now you have a child involved, right? That is somehow going to, suffer from whatever conversation that hasn't been talked about because somebody was uncomfortable in advance. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so, once I think we were maybe all together for an hour. And then at that point, she went to her room, we went to our room. And at that point in the hospital's eyes, we were not to have any contact. Because that's what they're used to. That's their protocol. Because in most scenarios, this is very much a business transaction. There is not any kind of a personal connection. And so at that point, you are to communicate via the nurse to keep that line of.
Sure. Well, so you say your room, is that really the son's room? So it's his room because obviously you're not in the labor and delivery part anymore. Like, did you go to?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're with the rest of the new families, the new moms. Yeah, we're right in that line. And that was one of the best experiences. I wish I could give the hospital kudos, but out of respect for them, I won't name it. But one of the best experiences, they had been through it before. They understood. They also understood the connection we had to our carrier. So the whole, you need to communicate with us. They were okay bending that rule because they knew, they witnessed the partnership we had in this. But at that point, you're separate groups now. And we are just experiencing the normal newborn ways at the hospital. And, she's doing her thing and the next day she's done and home, and off she goes with her life. And here we are trying to figure out this new thing in front of
parents, just like everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing I want to remind people of. We were able to all be in there because the beauty of attorneys. I'm not afraid to say my attorney will call you because, again, this is a very real scenario and a very special moment. And certainly was not going to deny our carrier having her husband there. He should be there. This is a major life thing for his wife, and a lot could go wrong. He absolutely should be there for her. But for us, the idea that we had to pick who could be in there was never an option for me. And so a couple phone calls and, looping your attorney in, flex when you have to flex. I'm not one to flex, but there are times in life where you have to look out for yourself and make sure that you're owed what you deserve. And if you have to flex, do it, because there's a lot more heart out there than we realize. And when you explain a scenario, people get it. And so, you make sure you have the people there that you want and that this experience is what you expect and deserve. And so through the whole process, don't be afraid to ask questions, challenge when you need to, because at the end of the day, you're fighting for your experience and you're fighting for your child's experience. And so be your own best advocate through all of it.
In all life?
Well, that too.
Tell me about the relationship you have with the carrier now.
Yeah. So our legal agreement, and most do, say that, once birth is done, you're done. No contact. You're going your separate ways. And in most scenarios, that is the case because you don't know them. And that is written in our contract. But we have agreed, because of the personal relationship we had prior to that, we do still have a relationship and we see her on occasion. And when the time is right, our son will know her. And yes, he knows her, but he will know the capacity in which she played in his coming to life. Because I personally feel that they have a bond from those 9 months. And who am I to take that away from them? And if they want to create this bond going forward as he grows, I am in full support of that. Partly comfortable with that because biologically there is no connection. And so aside from the legal documents we signed, legally she has no right to the child. And so I'm fully in support of, he will know that story when the time is right. And he is totally allowed to develop whatever kind of relationship he wants with her because of that, what they went through together. And so we're very lucky in that scenario that we get to keep her around and still just experience. I mean, our families became one. One of her children, I always say, is our son's first friend. It's just it's such a memorable thing that we have to keep giving it energy because we never want to forget it.
Yeah, because it just is such an important part of it. Like, again, like that's not a connection I will ever get either, right? Like some of the things that you get, I won't, right? Like I wouldn't get that kind of connection. My kids don't have that kind of connection with anybody but me. So like, I just always think in these situations, right? Like there's blended families and divorced families. And, like if it's all heart led, it's just more people to love and more people to love on you and more people to love on your children and more people to like be there for you when shit goes awry, because it's gonna. Yeah, I think that, God, what a gorgeous story, really, Brent. Like,
and I look at it too as, our son deserves to have a female presence in his life. He's got wonderful grandmothers, he's got wonderful aunts, but the more female involvement in his life, the better, because there's something that, we as his two dads can't give him in that capacity. And so, if she can be an additional presence, absolutely. Every female that is in his life, I find value with. And, I very much encourage he needs to have those relationships because we can only give him so much on our end.
Well, we can all only give so much, it's just good to have more people, like more
absolutely.
People, more better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would love to get into, we could get into an entire conversation, which might have to be part 2 about raising a child.
Yeah.
As a same-sex couple.
Yeah.
Is the right way to say it even?
That's how I say it.
Okay, I don't even.
So it's fine.
Sometimes I'm like, fuck, am I saying the right, like, politically correct thing? like we could go on and on and on. Obviously, I want to be respectful of your time, but like as you've gone through this experience, like the first, like the baby times and that part of it, has this like, just like it does with any, traditional family, how has this changed like your outlook on life and this experience of surrogacy and, gestational carrier and how much you've learned? Like, tell me about like what this has done, the experience in and of itself has done for you.
For me, it's humbled me. It's given more value to life, which I know is probably the cliche answer, but it's really just put a lot of things into perspective. But it's also really taught me to, you need to be thankful for what's in front of you, but also kind of back to that advocacy part. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to stand up for yourself. You need to advocate for those around you. But it's also taught me to be proud. This is our journey. This is our story, and this is our life. And so going forward, yes, will we come across people that don't agree? Or is our son going to experience people that just don't understand? And yes, that will be a very real scenario. But it's how we educate ourselves, educate the people around us, and educate him on this is your path and you are loved more than you will ever know by an army of people. And, at the end of the day, love makes a family. We have a book that we read to them, and that is the title. It's love that makes the family. It can be a mom and a dad. It can be two dads. It's a whole range of things. And we're also extremely lucky that the daycare he's in, there is so much diversity and there are many different family structures. So from this age, he's already been exposed to family looks very different for everybody, but they're all still a family. And so it's just really brought things home. And just besides making sure I do my best raising this child is also educating when and where I can and advocating for those that maybe can't or, don't have the voice to. And also let's talk about it. Yeah. Don't be afraid to talk about it. And I even, I have to give kudos to my employer, working in a pretty conservative industry. I never once have felt like I've had to hide anything. And I've had nothing but support on that end. And so, you'd be surprised who's on board. And also, if you are in a situation that maybe isn't the quote norm, own it and tell the people around you that it's okay. Ask questions. Let's learn together. Or you're not going to offend me. Don't be offended by everything. If people are asking questions, they want to learn. So educate them because you're a real person in front of them that can show them, like, here is a physical example of this scenario I've never thought I would come across. With my employer, I even told them once, like, because I could tell they were dancing around questions. And I finally just said, just ask. I'm not going to be offended. I know I'm the first gay male having a kid for you. Let's own it, but let's do this together. Like, we don't progress as a society if we don't have hard conversations respectfully.
Yeah.
So that is my very long-winded high horse answer to what I've learned.
I love it. I have a question. I have a question that's like,
yes.
When you, assuming you came out, I don't know how that happened. Like you came out, did you think that having a child would be possible for you?
I guess it was never not possible.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate in my journey that I've never had anybody turn their backs on me for who I am. My family has been great. I mean, I have zero complaints about that experience. So then to look at, well, I wanted a family, but is this an option? I guess, like I said, it never wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing about living where we live. We're mostly progressive. And again, goes back to, I don't care if you don't like it. I'm still going to do it. This is something I want, something we want. And so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so it just was never
found a way, right? Like I recently read a book. I can't remember what the book was. The premise was change it from I can't afford this to how can I afford this?
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't do this thing. How about how can I do this thing? Right? Because there is always a way. And there are people all over the world doing what you did. You're not the first person. Even if you were the first person, you still can do it. It's just like there's lots of people that did things for the first time. But in this particular instance, there are attorneys set up for this and escrow accounts set up for this and hospitals set up for this, right? Like, somebody else found a way.
Yep.
You can find a way too. It's just
Absolutely.
you have to give yourself the permission to find out how.
Yes. And don't be in a hurry.
Yeah.
Do it on your timeline. Do it on the parameters you have. There's such a pressure to, you need to be pregnant. It needs to happen in this time frame. Just everybody's journey is their own, and we need to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but we have to be okay with it. And we have to know that our path is our path, and you're the only one that gets to decide what it is. And you're the only one that gets to make decisions. Everyone else can have an opinion, but it's your decision, because at the end of the day, you have to be happy with it.
Yeah.
And just take every step for what it's worth and find the meeting, whether it's right then or later, but just, it'll work. And the path will happen how it's supposed to happen for you.
Yeah. Tell me, Brent, are you willing to, I mean, I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but like, are you willing, if somebody wanted to reach out to you as an advocate, as somebody to, as a resource, as somebody to ask questions to, are you willing to do that? And if so, how can they find you?
Absolutely. I would love to further the conversation, to be a resource, to be an advocate, whatever you need. Absolutely. Email or phone is the best. I don't know if you want me to provide that, or if you'll provide it within a link, what works best for you.
Yeah, we just for like privacy issues, we'll just probably put it in our show notes. So
Perfect.
If you want to connect with Brent, we will put all of that in our show notes. We'll put his information there. And you could always reach out to me too, and I'll get you in touch with Brent. I talk to him.
Yeah, I would love it.
Almost daily basis.
I know when I don't hear from you, I get worried.
Right. I know. Right. And if you need a HELOC, Brent's your guy.
Hey, come talk to me. Let's talk banking.
Brent, this is so amazing. Thank you so much.
I love this. I'm so happy to be a part of this. And I'm very honored that am I the first male to be on this podcast?
Second.
Okay. I'll take second place. Hey, there we go. That counts for something.
I mean, it does. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. No, I'm so honored to be part of this. The things that you do are truly inspirational, and the stories to share are just great. And so, yeah,
it's amazing. I started this out, I started this like hashtag actually I can, with the idea that, it would be a lot of like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I thought it would be. I didn't think that I would have a surrogacy conversation, but the more I thought about it, I was like, oh my God, this fits right in, right? Like, fuck, yes, actually you can do this too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So many things out there that people are doing right now that are just like, even in the simplest form, are just blowing my mind, right? Like, I mean, this is not simple, I realize, but like, there's other ways to have family, like in all the simplest things that we do in life, right? Like shelter, food, water, kids, like all those finances, like all those kind of like wheel of life things. There's a million different ways to do each one of those things. And we have this like, like a circle with all these pie pieces, like this is how you should do it. Yep. If you are a white female in 2024, this is how you should fucking do it. And you should do it perfectly, and you should do it this way. And this is the only way to do it. If you are a gay man in 2024, this is the way you should do it. And this is the only way there is. And then there's people out there just fucking killing it in 100 different ways on 100 different levels and saying, fuck off to societal norms. And it doesn't have to be like, I keep telling people too, like, you don't have to blow up your life to do this shit.
No.
You don't have to like quit your family and move to Bali in order to be a yoga instructor. You can just like flip on your camera and start teaching yoga, and somebody on YouTube will watch.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many ways to do things that if we could just like, to your point, let's just own who we are and how we're doing things and put ourselves first. There's just like no way to live life to the fullest if you don't put yourself first. That's just.
Yeah. And, do it your way, and don't say I'm sorry. And for the rest of us, support those and lift those up that are doing it their way, and talk about it. Just talk about it. So many of these things everybody's going through it. So why can't we just frickin' talk about it?
Yeah. Right. And I think
if you have an issue, get out of the way. Get out of my life.
The more we like take things out from underneath the bed and strip the shame off of them, it's all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I guess this isn't that really big of a deal because a million other people are having the same exact issue.
Yep. Yeah. And the good we could do if we just all got together and talked.
I know.
Yeah. It'd be amazing.
I know. Well, this is a good start. So
yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Even if one person hears my story and takes something, we've done our jobs. And down the road, if you want to dive in further to the other pieces, I'd be more than happy. So
I would love that because I think that there's like a whole nother like part 2 to this of like, what's it like raising a child for their first 3 years, and like what conversations are you looking for?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't wait.
Okay, this is so great.
Right.
Thank you so
yes,
much.
thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Yes,
anything
thank you.
Say the word.
Thanks, Brent.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of living authentically with me. Before you go, don't forget to connect with me on Instagram. Shoot me a message at Katie Rip. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode and connect with you further. And remember, if you want more details on today's episode or just want to explore more about designing your life unapologetically, head on over to my website at katierip.com. There, you'll find all the juicy details and resources you need to keep the inspiration flowing. Lastly, if you'd like to join me on the show, whether it's to tell about your experience of designing your own life, to share your expertise, or if you'd like to participate in lifestyle coaching live on air, don't hesitate to reach out. Your story could inspire countless others on their own path to living authentically. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep living boldly, designing your life, and remember, #actually, I can.